Hi everybody, Dan Oman here with some exciting news. DRF Formulator, the gold standard in past performance information, is now free, exclusively on DRF Bets. Join DRF Bets with the promo code WINNING, get a $250 first deposit match bonus, a $10 free bet, and free Formulator already uploaded to your account. Access Formulator's premium features, including sortable trainer stats, race replays, personalized trip notes, and lots more. Free Formulator, exclusively on DRF Bets.
Hi everyone, David Aragona here, taking a look at the future race on Saturday at Belmont Park. Opening day there is Thursday of this week, and their future race on this first weekend of the Spring Summer Meet at Belmont is this Elusive Quality, going 7 furlongs on the Widener turf course for these older horses. A field of 11 signed on, a pretty competitive affair. Got some horses that are coming back off layoffs, some turning back in distance. Not an easy race to handicap. Let's throw up the field for this race, and the lukewarm favorite that I pegged on the morning line is the number 6 Value Proposition, a horse that always seems to take plenty of money for the Chad Brown Bard. 7 furlongs is a distance that he definitely does handle. He's responded well to them turning back in distance to one-turn races over the past season or so. So he's definitely a player in this race, but by no means a standout. The number 7 Snapper Sinclair is a pretty classy runner that's switching back to turf after a series of dirt races, also coming back to this country after an overseas trip. Some others that could take money, including the number 11 Therapist, all the way on the outside. Therapist actually won the Elusive Quality Stakes back in 2019. He also won a 7 furlong stakes race at Belmont a couple of years ago. So he's definitely a horse that relishes the one-turn elongated sprint configuration that they run at Belmont. We'll just see if the 7-year-old version of Therapist can get back to his top form. But there are some horses at bigger prices that you might also want to consider. We're going to get into a few of them, but before we talk about the major contenders, let's take a look at the Time Form US pace projector for this race. Kind of a murky pace situation, no flag predicting a fast or slow pace, but you do have 3 horses shown up towards the front end, and I do think those are the right 3. The number 3 Proven Strategies, I would imagine, would be the one that does secure the early lead. He seems like the one that's most committed to getting to the front, and having drawn inside of his 2 main pace rivals, I would imagine that his jockey Dylan Davis will be intent on getting him out to the front end. But horses like the number 9 Milton the Monster has tactical speed, as well as the number 10 American Monarch, both horses that are coming off a series of dirt races switching back to turf. You see that favorite, the number 6 Value Proposition, tucked right in behind the leaders, and I would imagine his rider Manny Franco, if he could pull that kind of trip on this horse, he would be pretty pleased, because Value Proposition is a horse that can be a little bit difficult to ride at times, but if he's able to work out that pocket trip, I think that could be the key to success for him. Let's take a look at Value Proposition's race when he won going this 7 furlong distance in the Oyster Bay Stakes, going back to October of last year. And as I said, this was going the same trip over the Widener turf course at Belmont Park, and that is him in those red and white Clarvich stable silks, coming off the far turn, taking over from some rivals. He was bet down to 4-5 this day, probably facing maybe a slightly softer field than the one that he's encountering in this Elusive Quality as he comes back second off a layoff for this race. He shows in this race that he handles the distance, but you can kind of see he's a bit of a quirky horse. He's finishing on his left lead. He's not always the prettiest finisher. He sometimes likes to lug in his races. Not the easiest horse to ride, as I was saying towards the top of this preview. So we'll see what we get from him here. He has a series of speed figures that just point him out as one of the top contenders for this race. His best numbers in the low 120s on the Time Form US scale will make him pretty tough here. I will say, when he came off the layoff last time in the Dangerous Hour, going the 1 mile distance at Aqueduct, wasn't his best effort, but they tried something new that day, sending him to the front end. That's unlikely to happen here. They're likely to ride him from a stalking position once again, and he's had success using that running style in the past. So Value Proposition just makes a lot of sense. We'll see if he does offer any value, because, as I said, he's a horse that typically takes a lot of money. Another horse with a prior stakes win at this distance at Belmont Park is the number 11 Therapist. And let's take a look at when he won the first defense stakes going 7 furlongs back in 2020. This was a bit of a controversial victory because he does lug into the stretch of this race, and you might notice they come onto the wire. There is some bumping between him and some horses to his inside, but Therapist does get the job done this day going this 7 furlong distance. Not the first time that he's won going this trip. Actually, he's done this 3 times at Belmont Park, winning winning stakes races going the 7 furlongs. He actually won the Elusive Quality Stakes back in 2019. So I like the turn back for Therapist, but I'm just a little bit concerned about his recent form. Seems like he's lost some of the late punch, the turn of foot that he used to possess as a younger horse. He is getting up there in age now. He's a 7-year-old. He did get some pace ahead of him last time in the Danger's Hour, but once again, just lacked some finish coming off the layoff that day. Perhaps he could improve second off the layoff for Christophe Clement. The Clement barn does not have great numbers coming off layoff, so there is the right for this horse to step forward, getting back to his favorite distance. I'm just a little bit skeptical that he can do it, and I think he's a horse that could take some money in this race. The number 7, Snapper Sinclair. And again, let's turn back the calendar and go back to a previous win of his when he won on the turf last September at Kentucky Downs in the TVG Stakes. He's coming through the long stretch in Kentucky Downs this day, taking the lead off the far turn, and he's going to hold off a series of challenges coming down to the wire to win this race. Snapper Sinclair has made 38 starts in his career. Most of those have come on the dirt, but looking through this horse's past performances, I actually think he's better overall on the turf. And he really is good when he gets to run at Kentucky Downs, as he is in this replay. I think he's won 4 times on the turf in his career, and 3 of those victories have come in lucrative stakes races at Kentucky Downs. So he really does appreciate that undulating course in Kentucky. We'll see if he's able to translate that turf form to Belmont Park, going the 7 furlong distance. I don't think the trip is going to be any problem for him because he's won going shorter, or he's been defective, I should say, going shorter and longer than this. The big question I have about Snapper Sinclair is his current form, because he did kind of tail off at the end of last year into the winter, racing on dirt and synthetic, and those are surfaces that he's handled in the past, and he's coming back off pretty short rest following an overseas trip to Dubai to contest the Godolphin Mile. Didn't run well over there, and he's coming back pretty quickly. I just think there are a lot of question marks around this horse, and given his name recognition, I think he's another one that could attract some support in this race, so I wanted to look elsewhere for a bit more value. Horse that's kind of an enigma in this spot is the number 8, Toro Strike. We'll take a look at his past performances. Off his European races, I think he's got to be considered a major contender in here. Though some of those time form ratings that you see, especially the 120 that he earned in his final race of 2021 at Goodwood before being transferred to the Todd Pletcher barn, that was a pretty impressive effort. And he beat some solid fields overseas, contested some Group 1 and Group 2 races that he was effective in. So Toro Strike, based on the overseas form, is competitive here. The big question mark with Toro Strike is, what happened last time when he was making his first start for the Todd Pletcher barn? I guess it's possible that 5.5 furlongs that he contested at Fairgrounds is a bit too short for him, but this horse just came up completely empty after chasing the early pace of Just Might in that spot. The pace came apart a little bit, but this horse was completely just out of energy by the time they got to the 3/16 pole in the stretch. So a little bit concerned about that last race for Toro Strike. Todd Pletcher, not really known as a trainer for having a lot of success with overseas shippers like this, so we'll see how much money he takes. He's got Irad Ortiz on his back. Horses ridden by that rider typically do attract a lot of support at the windows. So I wanted to look elsewhere, but he's definitely a wild card in this race. A horse who could have a major impact on the pace is the number 3, Proven Strategies. Let's take a look at his last race when he won an allowance event at Gulfstream, holding on to win by a half length after leading the entire way. And this is the way that Proven Strategies likes to do it. He's a speed horse who chooses to set a moderate pace and tries to hold on at the end. And you could see coming to the wire here, he's holding off Skyro, his main rival, who is the 3-2 favorite. That horse kind of hanging on his left lead, which allows Proven Strategy to hold him off coming onto the wire. Proven Strategy is just looking at his time formula speed figures, is running fast enough to be competitive here. Those 120 plus time formula speed figures that he's earned in his last race and 3 back make him one of the fastest horses in this spot. And turning back to 7 furlongs shouldn't be a big problem for him because he does have that early speed to work with. It's just, he seems like he's most competitive going a mile on turf courses that are pretty hard. Gulfstream seems like it's really well suited to his strengths. We'll see if he's quite as effective at Belmont Park. The turf course that we were dealing with on opening day at Belmont had a little bit of give to it, even though it was rated firm. So we'll see if that really is to Proven Strategies' liking. But I saw him as getting some pressure from some of those dirt horses that are switching to turf on the outside. So I wanted to go elsewhere in this race. A horse that is switching surfaces that I think is pretty interesting is the number 9, Milton the Monster. Now, this is a horse who has never raced on the turf. all of his prior 14 starts have come on the dirt, but he's gotten pretty good lately. Two of his last three races have achieved some pretty high time formula speed figures, especially that race three back when he got a 122 over a sloppy sealed track at Parks. And I think it's interesting to note that this horse has really relished sealed racetracks when he gets to run over them on the dirt. And sometimes horses with a little bit of turf inclination can start to show their talents over that really packed down dirt surface that you get when you're running over a sealed racetrack. And while Milton the Monster doesn't have a big dam side turf pedigree, he is sired by Jack Milton. And if you look through Jack Milton's progeny and formulator, almost all of Jack Milton's best runners have come on the turf. The only outlier among them really is Milton the Monster. So it's going to be interesting to see what this horse does getting on the turf. If he can translate his recent speed figures to the grass surface, I think he's a major player here, and he's drawn well outside of that main pace rival. I didn't make him my top pick, but I think he's a horse at a price that you could get in there somewhere. So I'll talk about him a little bit more when I throw my picks for this race, but he's one that I do want to have in the mix. One more horse that I want to discuss is the number one Penalty as we head all the way down towards the rail. And just taking a look at Penalty's past performances, you'll notice that the last time he tried this 7 furlong distance came in an optional claiming race last May at Belmont Park. So same conditions that he's facing in this Elusive Quality, and he overcame a pretty slow pace that day to get up to win over some pretty nice horses, including Chewing Gum and Kantaka, horses that have stakes form from the past. And Penalty closed into some blue color-coded fractions that day to get it done. He did finish off the board in 2 subsequent starts, but he just met better horses after that in the poker, and then something went amiss last time behind Snapper Sinclair in the TVG stakes. Some horses just don't really handle that Kentucky down surface, and also he came out of that race with a slight injury, so he's been off since then. He's returning as a new gelding. You don't often see 7-year-old horses making their first starts after being gelded, but Bill Mott was saying this horse was a little bit difficult to handle, and they're hoping the gelding kind of makes him a little bit more cooperative, both in his training and his races. He's going to need some pace to close into, but I think there could be some developing up front as some of those horses that are switching to the turf press proven strategies on the front end. And I just think Penalty's a little bit underrated overall, and 7 furlongs is the right distance for him. So let's throw my picks for this race. And I did put that number one Penalty on top. I got him at 10-1 on the morning line. I think anything around that in 8-1 to 10-1 range would be a fair price on him. I do have that surface switcher, the number 9 Milton the Monster, in second. I'm pretty intrigued by this horse. I actually almost made him my top pick, but I think that there are some questions that he definitely has to answer facing some pretty good turf horses in this race. I got the logical value proposition in third, and then another trip horse, the number 2 Big Package that I didn't spend too much time on. He's my 4th pick in this race, but I think that you could find some prices that will offer value opportunities in this Elusive Quality on Saturday at Belmont Park. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.